All right, guys, so this is part two of making cards that transition on hover. Um, Now, from my previous video, I had a few people asking me for the code. As a general rule, I don't provide code for these videos because it's more of a teaching experience than a here's a widget. So the idea is that I teach a concept and you have to go and figure it out, do it yourself. Uh, in this case, what I will do is just to appease some people, I will export the final template as a bricks template, and you can import it and go for it. Now, one of the other reasons I don't generally do it is because often I'll use framework variables to speed things along, and you won't necessarily have that framework. So in this particular instance, I will not use any framework variables. I will just use raw values, and then you'll have to change those to meet your framework that you use. So that said, in the comments, the Facebook community for bricks, Amanda Lucas asked if we could do a example based on a Envato elements or Envato or theme forest, whatever it is, widget that she'd seen. And I've created something that's close to it, but couldn't quite get there with the JavaScript. This one actually required JavaScript. So I'm not going to do this full example. I'm just going to do the transitions example, but not the JavaScript example. I'll show you what I mean. If we look at this image on the left here, if I roll my mouse from the left, what we see is the overlay comes in from the left. We've got a text link at the top here, which fades in from the top a little bit. I think it's about 30 pixels. We've got a divider, which slightly grows after a delay. And then we've got a, I think this is the category, and that slides in from the left. If we go from the top down, the overlay goes from the top down. The text link and the divider don't change. They do exactly the same thing, but the category comes from the top. If we go from the bottom, the opposite happens. So again, the text link and the divider don't change, but the branding does change. So the category changes and the direction of the overlay. So that's the gist there. So we're going to build those animations. I'm not going to do, so what's tricky about this is there's some JavaScript involved, which is detecting my mouse movement, and it changes the animation class depending on my mouse movement when I enter or exit these here. So what you end up with is this kind of thing here. See, I've got a bit of a bug there, which I haven't resolved. So when I go from left to right there, it changes. So it's actually changing the animation. So the first one here, when I go in from the left, the animation goes from left to right. When I exit from the right, the animation goes from left to right, left to right, left to right, right to left to right, left to right, right to left. Okay, so there's some JavaScript involved in doing that, which is a bit too complicated for this video, and I still haven't resolved one issue with it, which I won't go into here. So what we're going to do is build these. Now, I'm going to start with a base page. I'm just going to do a new page. I think these were called Zebre, which what I got from there. So I'll call it Zebre, Zebre v2. Edit that with bricks. Did I hit the button? Yes, I did. By the way, I'm using local by Flywheel. Sometimes it just gets a little bit slow. Particularly, I find while I'm doing a video recording, it's strange. Now, you will also notice in here, I do have Advanced Theming, which gives me a bunch of extra shortcuts. These shortcuts on the side here, purely productivity. Everything I'm doing here, you can do with pure bricks by using these, element section add-ons there. Selecting your elements from here. I'm just speeding things along so that, but you can do things manually, entirely up to you. So the first thing I want to start with a section and a container. In that container, I'm going to add, not a block, I'm going to add a div. And it's going to be my Zebre card. And I'll call it V2 because I've already got a Zebre card. And in that Zebre card, what have I got? I've got an image. I've got a overlay, and I've got a content container which also overlays the image, and it's got some content and stuff. So I need an image and 2 containers here. So let's go back to the builder. So I need an image, and I need a div. I'm going to call that overlay, and I'm going to call this my content. And inside my content, I've got a text link, a divider, and a basic text. So I'm going to get my text link, my divider, and my basic text. There's the beauty of using these shortcuts in AT. The common things that you use are just there. You don't have to head over to the left-hand side and search for those, and it's just super, super cool. All right, so the basic text, I think we called our category. The rest of the names, I'm just going to leave as they are. Now, I always use BEM naming, and for those of you who are against it or say it's a waste of time, you're wrong. It absolutely changes the things for the better, particularly when you start naming your CSS and your JavaScript and everything as well to match. It just keeps everything consistent. So you have to name your classes something. Why not use something simple that makes sense like BEM? Anyway, that's it. So I'm going to use the advanced theme as class converter. I hit that and just hit yes or create classes, and then it's done. So that is identical to me clicking on this element, going over to here, typing in zebracast-v2, zebra-card-v2, going to the next one, zebracard v2 _ image. Just that right click, create classes, did all that for me. So if I didn't do that, if I didn't have advanced schema, I think also automatic CSS has a feature for this as well. You have to manually create all those classes. So one right click and create classes, done. That's the beauty of this, right? All right. Now we want to set up a grid here. So on my container, I'm just going to change that to a grid. So I'm going to do this at the ID level and make it a gap of 3 rem. And we'll just do 3 columns. So I'll just do a simple one, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. Did I do that right? No. 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. So I've got 3 columns. Beautiful. Ready to go. So on my image, I'm just going to select a image. So I'll just select the same one I did previously. So that one there. So there's my image. On my overlay, I want to set some color. So on my style, my overlay, actually I'll use these advanced schema shortcuts here. Again, they're just shortcuts to the same things that you've already got in bricks. And I'm going to set a background color. I'm not going to use any framework. I'm just going to use a slider here, create a color and give it some transparency. That's it. And then I'm also going to go to my layout for that. I'm going to set my width to 100%. So I always, with these, I always start with a pure div in bricks, not a block. It just gives me, I think it's easier than having to undo the defaults that have been added to a block. You just add what you need. And in this case, all I need it to be is a div. So 100% wide. We're going to set the, actually we're going to go above that because I haven't set the relative positioning on the card. So I go to the card, I need to set my position to relative. I need to set my, where are we? My isolation to isolate, which I'll explain a little bit later. And that's what I need on the card. So my overlay now. One thing we don't have in bricks is a inset property. We've got to use these top, left, bottom, right. So I'm just going to, for now, and actually I'll have to change this because when I animate it, I'm going to have to do this differently. So I'm just going to make that absolute now, just so we can lay this out. Go 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, and what we're going to do now is on our content, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to set that to be a relative. And we're going to set that to 0, 0, 0, not O, 0, 0, 0, 0. Absolute, I should say. All right, so there we go. So that's at the top there. Now with our content, we want to have that as a flex. So we're just a div, so we're going to set that to a flex. Column, we're going to center everything in the column. And then we're going to go to our spacing and we're going to put some padding. Again, I would use a framework for this, but I'm just going to use, I don't know, 2 rem padding. So we've got 2 rem padding all the way around. And we're going to use a spacing between our elements here. So maybe a 1 rem spacing, maybe a little bit more. 1.5 rem spacing. And now we can see we've got some weird, because of our line heights on our text here. We need to go to our text link and make sure we always select the class for these. And we want to make sure our line height is 1 on that, and that gets rid of the extra spacing that we've got on there. The same as on our text box here. Set our line height to 1. We also want to change that content just to say brand. And now we've got equal spacing, because the line height on these fonts will give you some strange box sizing because they don't always fit the size of your text. So that's that. All right, now we've got a basic layout. Okay, now thinking because we've ordered these things in the correct order on the DOM, we don't need to worry about Z indexes actually. So the isolation isolate doesn't matter for this one. Isolation isolate means that that is your lowest point. So any negative Z index on top of that won't go any lower than that. So it doesn't disappear behind the content. But I think that's it. That's all we need. Now, what did we call that thing there? It was paper crane. So we just might as well make that a actual link and make it paper crane. At this stage, we're just using the bricks UI to style everything up. Go to our content, our typography, and it's all uppercase. Maybe it's a slightly bolder font, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll make that say it's 500 instead of 400. Whatever you like. Okay. All right, so that is the basics of what we want to see when we roll our mouse over, right? So the next point we've got to do here, just let me think. Yeah, okay, so that's that. Everything you want to do with styling, the sizing, the aspect ratio of your image, what sort of stuff you can do in here in the UI, just on those classes. What we want to do is make this so that we can animate it on a hover. So we're going to go back and use our standard setup for that. So we're going to go to the Zebra card V2 at the top, so our BEM block at the top. Go into our CSS, and again, I'm using AT shortcuts. If you don't have it, you can certainly go to Style, scroll all the way down to CSS, find that there. I just like these shortcuts. It just makes it easier. Okay, we're going to start with a root, and we're going to define some variables. So first one we're going to do is a transition variable. We might need more than one transition. I'm going to do a transition of, say, all, keep it simple, over 0.3 seconds, and we want to ease out. Okay, and then we might do another transition of all 0.3 seconds, and we'll go ease in, just so it's different. And we're actually going to put a 0.1, 0.1, maybe 2, so it's really obvious, 2-second delay on that. Okay, so that we're going to use when we hover over here. There's a slight delay before our divider changes, comes in and animates. So we're going to test that. We always change that a little bit later. Okay, now we need to do some animation on the overlay. So I mentioned naming before with BEM. So my typical go-to is that from my block level, we have elements. So for example, image, overlay, content. So I would typically, when I'm doing variables on that block, I'd start from the elements. So I'd do overlay. And the overlay would be, and these are always done in pairs. So the overlay, we would say insert, block, start. So it's the element and then the property, the actual CSS property you're going to use. And we'd say that is 0. So we're going to go from the left And then what I normally do is grab that same name and I add a hover. And I actually use hover for both focus within and for hover. So here's my hover. Set all those as zeros at the moment. We need another pair for our inset block end. Okay, we need another pair for our insets inline. And our inside inline. Okay, just grab that pair there. So these are all normal state, hover state. Okay, and that would be end and end. All right, now what we need to do is, because in the UI here for the settings for that overlay, we don't have an inset property. We've only got the top, right, bottom, and left. So I'm going to get rid of all of those. Okay, so we don't have any inset on that. And what I'm going to do is go back to my builder here. Sorry, back to the CSS for the cards. And I'm going to now set my root. And here's where we target the element. So you can see our naming of our variables relate to the element on that BEM structure. And so does this here. The root is translated in bricks to what's selected up in the selector up here, the class selector. So it's root dash dash overlay. It just keeps everything really, really simple, right? And now what we're going to do is inset of, and the way inset works, like all CSS properties, it's top, right, bottom, left, which gets confusing with the block start, block end, inline start, inline end. So what we have to do is do a var. We're going to start. So the top is our block start. So we take our variable from up here. Okay, and then we want to do a var. Oops, don't need a semicolon. So the right is our inline end. Okay, so top, right, bottom, left. That's where it gets pretty confusing when you're thinking about inset as opposed to just the old top, right, bottom, left properties. I'm going to do a var of the bottom, which is our block end. Okay, and then we want to do a var of our left, which is our inline start. Okay, so there we go. So we've got basically what we had before. We've got top, right, bottom, and left of 0 just by applying that as an inset property. All right, now what we're going to do is we want to start our first one. We want to start our overlay from the left-hand side. So we're going to do this is where it gets opposite with inset. So we have to go to our inline end and tell it that we want it to be 100% from the end. From the end. And that didn't work. Why didn't that work? So 1, 2, 3. Let's have a look at the front end, see what's going on with that. Okay, our overlay is 0, 0, right, 100%, 0, 0. That sounds right. I'm not sure why that's not working. Why is it not working? So if we went 0, 100%, 0, 0, why are we not working? Because we've got width of 100% on the overlay, which we don't want. Where's that coming from? Width of 100% on the overlay, back to the overlay. I put 100% on the overlay. That's why it didn't work. Okay. Now, the other thing you'll notice in the bricks builder is that this is a minimum of 90 by 90. So we need to clear that up as well. So in these settings in here, this is for the editor, editor effects. We're going to go edit tot. We're going to go min, width, unset, and min height, unset. That's just so that it doesn't look messed up in the editor. Now our overlay is all the way to the left because we've told it to be 100% from the end, from the inline end. That's now all the way to the left so we can't see it. All right, so the next bit here is something funky going on with the editor here. As we want to tell it to, when we're hovering over our card, we want these to change. So I'm going to do a root, and we're going to use the is keyword because we want to look at whether it's hovered or focus within. Focus within, and we're going to grab our pairs up here. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to grab the hover state, and we're going to change that to be a var. And then get rid of our other one. So I'm just going to do that for each of these. This is a really easy way to manage these. And it's quite obvious that we've got a normal state and we've got a hover state. Now this editor is a little bit, might be a little bit hard for you guys to see. You might have to zoom in a little bit on here. But if I zoom, it really breaks things. Okay, we've got one more, which would be this one here. Okay, it's a hover state, right? But it's just going straight to it. So the reason for that is we haven't set a transition. So we're going to use our transition 1. Actually, that should be transition 2 there. So we'll use our transition 1. And we're going to set our transition to var transition 1. There we go. There's our first effect, our overlay, which is similar to this. Okay, so we've done the overlay part of it, right? Now, what else do we need to do now? So we need to now transition these elements inside. So what's happening with the, let's have a look at the paper crane one. Paper crane is the opacity, starting from opacity of 0. It's slightly up. I know it's about 30 pixels I put on this, and then it comes down on hover. So we do the same thing here where we now select our text link. So we go to our pairs at the top here and we use our text link. So the naming again of this being the same as the element name that you've given here, which would be the same as the BEM class name you've given to it. So text link transition or transform. Transform is translate y minus 30 px. Okay, and then we've got the transform hover to be none. All right, now to get that working, all we have to do is grab that pair there, go down into our rule down the bottom here, add that pair there, change that value to be the variable of the hover state. And then get rid of that value there. All right. Now, what is going on there? Oh, we haven't applied it. So now we can do a couple of things here. My preference is to do all of my CSS in here. My preference would be to go root and then target the text link. And we need a hover state. Let's just use the same transition as the overlay. And then use the transform. Oops. As the var text link transform. That would be my preference to do that there. And you can see it's transforming now. Okay, we haven't done the opacity side. I'll come back to that because it gets a little bit trickier. Okay, so I prefer to do it there, but you can also put these into the Bricks UI settings if you want to. I think it makes more sense to have it here so it's all in the one place, right? Rather than just putting these values in the transition or the transform in the Bricks UI. It just makes sense to me. All right. Now, the other thing that's happening is the opacity is changing, right? So we go from opacity of 0 to opacity of 1. So let's do a text link. So we'll keep it all in a block there. So we'll do text link opacity. Again, element name, property of 0, and on hover, and set that to 1. All right, so then we grab our pair, go down to the bottom. Not sure what's happened here in Bricks, but we'll refresh that soon. Actually, I might just save that and refresh because that's bugging me, that. Okay. All right, so we're back to our Zebra card, CSS. We've got all that rubbish at the bottom now. Okay, we're back to that working properly. Okay, text link transfer. So we've got that happening. Now, what we need to do is on our text link, I'm going to do this as a separate rule, and I'll explain that to you very, very quickly. And if we set our opacity to be the opacity here as the var, what happens is we can't see it in the editor. So unless we hover over, if we're not hovering, we can't see the opacity anymore. So what we want to do is we want this to be visible in the editor. So we're going to add a class in front of that called bricks is front end. Okay, by adding that, bricks adds that class to the body when you're in the front end, so we can still see it in the editor. If I save that and have a look, not sure if that's still linked. You can see now in the front end, my paper crane is the opacity is 0, and then it comes in to 1, but in the back end, I can still see it there because I've used this bricks as front end. So anything to do with opacity, you just don't want to hide in the back end. You just use this bricks as front end. So that's the paper crane done, right? Now let's do the brand. We'll come back to the divider. So we go to the brand. We'll go down here. If I go to the category, I think it's called. So if I go to category, and looking at this here. I think that didn't change opacity, it just changes position. All right, so let's go back to that. So category transform. Okay, I'm going to set that to translate x minus 100%. Okay, and then on hover, we want that to be none. You can see why I'm not doing the JavaScript side because this is going to be a long enough tutorial as it is. So again, we need to take our pair there, down at the bottom. Oh, there's some really weird stuff happening with this editor. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's an advanced themer issue or whether it's the version of Bricks. I'm not really sure. I haven't had this weirdness happening previously. What I'll do is I'll bring this all up in VS Code a bit later so you can actually see this, because it's a bit hard to see in the in videos in this edit. So it's our category transform. Now we need to create a category. We're going to do a root category. Okay, and we're going to do our transform of a var transform. There we go. And see, we're not getting any transition. There's a couple of issues here, so we need to tell it what transition we want to use. So I'm going to grab that transition from there. Okay, so now we have a transition. See, it's only moving a little bit, and that's because we used a div, and our transform of minus 100% is 100% of that div. So we need to make that category 100% wide. Okay, now we see it's happening. Okay, but now it's 100% wide. The text box is to the left, so we need to go to our category here and into our topography and set that to center. There we go. So we've got our brand operating as it's supposed to now. All right, now we've got to deal with this divider now. Now, a little thing I found with the divider is with bricks. When you look at the divider, it's one of those elements that adds two elements. Where's the divider? Overlay, divider. There's a divider here. So we actually end up with a divider and then the line. Okay, so that actually puts an internal element in there. And that's actually important because if we go to the divider, if we animate the width here, it tries to animate the width of the line. Sorry, the line, not the actual divider itself, the whole divider. So what we're going to animate is the whole thing from the outside. So let's go to that. Let's go to our ZBrush card. And let's go to our divider. The divider, we'll put that in the center here because that's in the center of these two. So we'll just call that divider. Divider width. And we're going to make that say 3 rem. Okay, divider. Divider width. Hover. I'm going to make that say 7 rem. 70 pixels, roughly. All right. I must have tapped my insert key. Okay. Again, we need to grab that pair, come down to the bottom here, add that in there. Oh, we've got 2 T's. We'll grab that. So you can see at my typing speed here, if we didn't use advanced theme, it would be here a lot longer. I wish I knew what was going on with this editor. Okay, so back up here. The other thing that's happening is my mouse wheel doesn't always scroll inside here. See, it's scrolling the whole window. So sometimes it scrolls inside there and sometimes it doesn't. So there's funky stuff going on with the editor here. Okay, so we've got a divider width. So coming down into, see if I scroll my mouse wheel, it scrolls the whole window, not inside there. So I've got to use this bar. That's just started happening in the latest version of Bricks. Okay, so now we're going to go to our divider, and again the divider's in between, so I'm just going to make sure the way I lay my CSS out is the same way I've laid out the content here. So my roots, divider. See how this naming just makes it so much, makes sense because it's always going to be the same. So you don't have to check the class, you don't have to think about it. It's just always the same. So again, we're going to set the width to be our var width. We should see so the width changed. It did. All right, you can just see that width on the divider changing. All right, now the next thing we're going to do with that is grab our second transform, because I wanted that one to have a slight delay and a different effect. Oh, this is giving me the turds, this scrolling in here. I'm not sure what's broken that, but divider, transform, transition, I should say. So I'm going to use the transition 2, so we have a slight delay. Okay. Okay, there might be too long a delay. So we'll change that to say 0.1 second. There we go. There we go. We're getting better, but we've still got an issue because we haven't actually dealt with. We've got to deal with the opacity of that slider as well. So I'm going to divider, I should say. So divider, opacity 0. Hover. Make it 1. I'm just going to grab those two there, head down to the bottom. Once this is done, you'll see how easy it is to create modifiers. Okay, divider, opacity. Making it doubly hard with this mouse scroll not working. I keep trying to scroll with the mouse, the mouse wheel, and it just doesn't work sometimes. With a divider there. Okay. So now the divider opacity is gone, comes back in, but we can't see it in the editor. So what I'd suggest we do here is the same deal there. So we'll go to the bricks as front end, root divider. Okay, take our opacity out of there, put it to there, so we can still see it in the editor. Okay, let's have a look now. We're cooking with gas, I think. I'm just going to bring that up there. All right. Now we can see there's a problem there because our brand is showing, so we need to set our overflow on our card. You can do that at the UI level. That's easy enough to do there. Get a card selected, it is. Go to UI, set our overflow here to hidden. Again, you can do that in the CSS or in the UI, entirely up to you. Okay, so now it's disappeared and we've got exactly what we needed. So got our overlay coming in from the left. We've got our text link coming in and down from the top slightly. We've got our divider growing after a slight delay, and we've got our category, which is brand, sliding in from the left. That's exactly what we wanted. All right, now that's done. Our structure, our basics are already done. So here's the cool bit of doing it this way. I'm going to duplicate this card. So we've got a second version of that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a modifier. And on that modifier, I'm just going to grab the card name here, the BEM name. And I'm going to create a modifier here by just pasting that in, doing 2 dashes. And I'm going to call this from right. Okay, so from right. Now, what do we want to do on the from right? We want to grab some of our variables from here, from the roots. So let's just grab our overlay and text link. I think, no, overlay and category. There we go. We want the overlay and the category from here. So I'm just going to grab the whole lot and then we can delete what we don't need. Go back to my card from right, roots. Okay, we don't need to change. We might need to change. No, we don't need the block start or block end because that's going to stay the same. We don't need to modify the divider or the text link. We're just basically changing the way this works. So we want the start of that to be 0. And we want the start of the inline start to be 100%. Okay, there we go. Here's our two from right. So here's our left, here's our right. All we've changed is that one property. What we haven't changed though is the brand. See, the brand's coming from the left still. So instead of translating by minus 100%, we need to translate by 100%. Okay, so the brand now comes in for the right on that one, comes in from the left on that one. So we've got 2 of these done already. All right, let's do that again. Let's do a duplicate of that. In fact, I might just, so we can keep track of these, that is going to be my, got my from left modifier. And we're going to do this one as our from top. From top. Okay. So again, we grab our BEM block name. We then paste that back in and do a 2 dashes from top. Sorry about the clanky keyboard too. I need to get a better keyboard. I keep changing them because I keep breaking them. So this is going to make this one from top. Let's go back to our card here. Grab all those variables again. So we'll just grab the whole lot to there. That's it. And from top, we're going to do a root. Okay, what do we need to do here? We need to get rid of, we don't care about the category, we do. We don't need to care about the text link. We care about these. So the category transform, we want to translate from the top, make it translate Y. Okay, so this is our from top. And it's not 100% because it's 100% of that height. So we're going to have to give that a value. So minus, say, maybe 400 pixels. 400. Okay, so our brand came in from the top there. Maybe that's not the right amount, but we can figure that out later. And for our, so we want to start from everything, let's start with everything at 0. Okay, we start everything at 0, so we're fully covered. Now we want to go from the top, which means we want from the end to be 100%. So let's go to our block end and set that to 100%. Is our from top. Okay, so all we've done is changed our transform, translate Y. In fact, we can get rid of the ones we haven't changed. Inline, variables were set back to 0. We set our block end to 100%. All right, let's do one more, which will be the from bottom. Okay, we're going to again grab our class name there for the block, and we're going to call this from bottom. Yep, okay. Do the same thing, grab all of our variables here, go to our modifier, okay, it's weird. Okay, I'm just going to have to save and reload. Bricks is doing something funky here. Okay, go back to our this one here. So the from bottom. Now we can select our CSS. Don't know what happened there. Okay, we're going to override those variables there. Again, we don't want to do anything with the text link or the divider, so we get rid of those. Okay, so translate from the bottom. Maybe we want that to be 400 pixels from the bottom. 400 pixels from the bottom, so the opposite to the other one. Now, what do we want here? We want to set all this to 0. So it's fully loaded, and from bottom, meaning the top, needs to go to 100%. So our block start needs to be 100%. Okay, and there it is there. All right, let's have a look at what we got. Here's our modifier. So the first one comes from the left. We see the brand coming from the left. Next one comes from the right. We see the brand coming from the right. Next one comes from the top. We see the brand coming from the top. Next one comes from the bottom, and we see the brand coming from the right. Why is it coming from the right? That's not correct. Translate why. There we go. Now it's coming from, I had the wrong translate. So it's as simple as that. Once you've created the first version, all the other versions are as simple as overriding some variables. So in a nutshell, what I'm doing is doing a normal state, hover state, normal state, hover state. So just pairs, okay? I'm then coming down here and setting, when I'm hovered or focused, I'm setting my normal state to be the hover state, normal state to be the hover state. Really, really simple. Naming all of your elements using BEM naming, then your variable names are your BEM element name, and then your property, CSS property, and then on the hover state, you just add the hover. Now, by the way, I think I made that a link. I think I did. So because I've made a hover and focus, if I tab to that, it works. Tab to the next one, it works. Tab to the next one, tab to the next one. All of these work because we're using both hover and focus within states. So that's it. That is the entirety of how this works. You have complete freedom on what you do. You can set borders on them, border radiuses, box shadows, whatever you want to animate or transition. Just create a pair, add a rule for it. If you've got opacity on it, going to 0, separate the opacity to a Brix's front end prefix so that you can see it in the editor still. That's it. Bob's your uncle. So I'm going to export this template. Again, none of this template has used any framework variables or framework colors. It's all fixed values. If you are going to use this with a framework, highly encourage you to use your framework values and do that differently. We have a mix between our CSS and our Bricks UI for settings. Most of the fixed styling like colors, spacing, things like that has been done with the Bricks UI settings. All of the transitional stuff is being done here in the CSS editor, and it just makes sense to do it there. It's just a lot easier to manage. I did say I'm going to copy all that. I'm going to bring that up in VS Code. What about that? Just so you can see this CSS, because it's not easy to see in these in that small tiny sidebar that you get. Is what is it? CSS. Okay. Oh, doesn't understand the root. Okay, so that's in VS Code. So we've got our two transitions. One of them's got a slight delay, which we use for the divider. We use the same transition for all the others. And we've got our normal state and hover state pairs here. We've got our overlay, just a transition. This is the magic here. It's the inset, which is basically transitioning all these inline block and inset block and inset inline properties here. We have to deal with the editor giving us a minimum width and height of 90 pixels. These are very simple. Text length is transition 1, and that's the transform we want to use. The same with the divider, same with the opacity here, same with the category. We did have to set the width to 100% so we get the right amount of transition on it. And then here's the next bit of magic, where whenever your card is hovered or focused, swap your hover state to your normal state. And that's it. That is the entirety of how I do this. Keeps it very simple, very consistent, consistent naming, consistent methodology, and it works well for me. So I'm going to leave it here and hope that helps you guys.